And did you get any crack out of him?
And for more on that story, I'm joined by I-24.
Oh, as he rescued it for Borough.
"I hate his guts" is not a verified Robbie Keane quote, but the fire behind that headline helped make him Ireland's record scorer. Before we get into that fire, let's start with the newest storm around his name. In the middle of 2026, Celtic's majority shareholder, Dermot Desmond, reportedly saw Robbie Keane as a leading candidate to replace Brendan Rodgers as manager. The idea did not sit well with everyone. Several pro-Palestinian supporter groups pushed back hard, among them Celtic Fans, for the liberation of Palestine and North Curve Celtic. They pointed to Keane's earlier work managing Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel during the Gaza conflict, and they said that made him the wrong choice for Celtic Park. Banners appeared outside the ground. Graffiti showed up too. A joint statement backed by 67 separate supporter groups argued that giving Keane the job would be unacceptable given his recent history, and warned that his appointment could bring real trouble, including large protests, conflict with the club's board, and season ticket cancellations. As we trace how these rows followed Keane through his career, use the hype feature to give this video some hype. This is not the first time Robbie Keane has walked into a storm he did not fully create. Long before Celtic, long before Israel. He was already known across English football as a striker who scored goals and stirred up trouble along the way. So how does a record-breaking striker end up connected to so many damaged relationships? That question takes us back through years of training ground fights, angry managers, one very famous Christmas trip to Dublin, and a punch that most fans never even knew about. Here's the truth behind that big scary title. Robbie Keane never sat down and named 5 enemies. He never released a list, and he never confirmed a ranking. That is not how these stories usually start. Online football channels love to take old clashes, old arguments, and old dressing room stories and turn them into permanent feuds. It makes for a better headline, even when the real story is messier and more human. Part of the confusion around Robbie Keane also comes from his surname. Many people mix him up with Roy Keane, the former Manchester United captain. The two men share a surname and a nationality. They played for the Republic of Ireland during overlapping years, and both are tied in fans' memories to the Saipan walkout at the 2002 World Cup. Roy Keane has his own well-documented dispute with Sir Alex Ferguson, and he has said plainly that he will not forgive him. That is a real and separate story. It is not Robbie's story. Robbie Keane's real career still holds 5 genuine fractures. 5 moments where his relationships with major figures in British football broke down in front of everyone watching. Let's count them down properly, one at a time. Starting with the manager whose fury at White Hart Lane never fully faded away. Number 5 is Arsene Wenger. And this story begins at Highbury in April 2006, during a North London derby between Arsenal and Tottenham. During the build-up to Tottenham's opening goal, 2 Arsenal players, Emmanuel Iboué and Gilberto Silva, collided with each other and stayed down on the pitch. Tottenham did not kick the ball out of play. Play continued, and the attack ended with Robbie Keane scoring. Arsenal's manager Arsene Wenger was furious. He confronted Tottenham manager Martin Jol on the touchline while his players were still receiving treatment. The match finished 1-1. Long after the final whistle, the anger had not cooled down. Tottenham's assistant, Clive Allen, and coach Chris Houghton went for a friendly drink with 2 members of Arsenal's staff. Wenger walked in, refused to join them, and accused Tottenham's players and staff of cheating. Clive Allen took real offense at that, and his anger did not fade quickly. Years later, in 2011, Allen confronted Wenger again, this time in a stadium tunnel. He chased after the Arsenal manager and demanded a handshake that never came, later saying he would never give Wenger the time of day again as long as he lived. For Robbie Keane's part in all this, it is worth being fair. He did not injure anyone, and he did not order his teammates to play on. He simply finished the move in front of him and celebrated a goal, the way any striker would. But that goal, scored while 2 opponents lay on the ground, became the spark for a grudge that outlasted the final whistle by years. Keane was not the man shouting in that office. He was the man who lit the fuse without even trying. And that is often how these things work in football. One moment, one decision on the pitch, and somebody else ends up carrying the argument for years afterward, long after the players involved have moved on. Number 4 takes us back to David O'Leary and Leeds United. By the year 2000, Robbie Keane was already a well-traveled young striker, having moved from Wolves to Coventry City before a big money switch to Italian giants Inter Milan. That move did not work out. New manager Marco Tardelli saw him as surplus to needs, and in December 2000, Keane moved on loan to Leeds United, hoping for a fresh start. At Leeds, everything suddenly clicked. He scored 9 goals in just 14 starts, playing with real confidence and freedom. David O'Leary liked what he saw enough to make the deal permanent in May 2001, paying £12 million to bring him in for good. That should have been the beginning of something great. Instead, it was close to the peak. The following season, Keane's place in the team weakened. He managed only 9 goals across 33 appearances, a much slower return for a player who had looked unstoppable only months before. Around the same time, Leeds United ran into serious financial trouble. The club carried heavy debt, and big transfer fees were the only way out. Before the 2002 to 2003 transfer deadline, Keane was sold to Tottenham Hotspur for £7 million, £5 million less than Leeds had paid for him only a year earlier. There is no evidence that David O'Leary personally disliked Robbie Keane, and nothing here suggests a private grudge between the two men. What the story does show is a player who could not hold on to the trust he had earned in such a short space of time. A hot start turned into a quiet fall down the pecking order, and the falling transfer fee tells that story better than any headline could. Keane had proven what he could do, and then, for reasons only partly his own, he watched that value slip away. Number 3 brings in Harry Redknapp, and this one is different, because here Robbie Keane made the mistake himself. After a difficult spell at Liverpool, Keane returned to Tottenham, but his place in the team was no longer guaranteed. Younger forwards were ahead of him in the manager's plans, and frustration began to build as he watched his role shrink at the club where he had once been a first-choice starter. In December 2009, Harry Redknapp made a clear announcement to the whole squad. There would be no Christmas party for the Tottenham players that year, full stop. Robbie Keane did not accept that decision quietly. Behind the scenes, he took matters into his own hands, organizing and paying for a squad trip to Dublin himself, arranging flights and plans without asking for permission from his manager. It did not stay secret for long. Once the trip became public knowledge, Redknapp reacted with real anger. In his eyes, this was not a harmless night out with the lads. It was a direct challenge to his authority, carried out by one of his most senior and experienced players, right under his nose. Keane was fined £10,000 for the trip, a significant sum even for a well-paid professional footballer. He was sent to train with the reserve squad, a clear and public signal that trust between player and manager had broken down completely. His place among the regular starters faded fast after that, and by February 2010, he had moved to Celtic on loan, searching for the kind of regular football he could no longer find at Tottenham under Redknapp. Unlike the stories involving O'Leary or Benitez, this fracture cannot be blamed on tactics or bad luck. Keane knew exactly what Redknapp had said, and he chose to go around it anyway. Professional rejection can hurt any player, and it clearly hurt Keane here. But this time, his own judgment played a direct part in creating the problem, and that makes the Dublin trip one of the clearest examples of Keane's stubborn, competitive streak working against him. Number 2 is Edgar Davids, and this story turns physical. In 2005, Davids arrived at Tottenham's training ground, fresh from Inter Milan, carrying one of the biggest reputations in the squad. He wanted to be heard immediately. Former teammate Jamie O'Hara later said Davids walked in acting like he owned the place. Supremely confident in his own ability and status, he tried to set himself up as a leading voice in the dressing room, the kind of player whose opinion mattered most on any given day. There was just one problem. Robbie Keane already held that position, earned through years at the club, and respected by his teammates as their natural leader. During a training match, a disagreement between the two players grew heated very quickly. Words were not enough to settle it. Keane, who trained regularly as an amateur boxer in his spare time, squared up to Davids, and with a single punch, put him flat on the ground in front of the whole squad. Manager Martin Jol later confirmed that the fight had happened, admitting that such incidents were a real problem for team discipline, even as the squad moved past it quickly and got on with training. The story did not end there completely. The next day, Davids reportedly approached Jol in something close to disbelief and asked whether he had managed to land a punchback on Keane. He had not, and everyone in that dressing room knew exactly where they stood after that single moment. Keane's authority within the squad, already strong, only grew stronger once word of the punch spread among the players, even though nobody discussed it publicly. This is not a moment to celebrate. It was not a heroic scene, and nobody should treat a training ground punch as something admirable. What it shows is a side of Robbie Keane's leadership that could turn aggressive fast when somebody challenged his standing in the squad. The two players did move on afterward, and this was never described as a lasting personal war between them. But it stands as clear evidence that Keane's fierce competitive streak did not stop at the edge of the pitch, and sometimes it came out with his fists. Number 1 is Rafael Benitez, and this fracture cuts the deepest, because Liverpool was the club Robbie Keane had supported since he was a boy. In late July 2008, he signed for Liverpool from Tottenham for £19 million. It was the move he had dreamed about since he was a small boy growing up supporting the club. He put pen to paper on a 4-year contract and was handed the famous number 7 shirt, once worn by some of the club's greatest and most celebrated players. Even the transfer itself came with tension before a ball was kicked. Tottenham accused Liverpool of approaching Keane improperly before the deal was agreed, and only withdrew their complaint after Liverpool issued a public apology and made a donation to the Tottenham Hotspur Foundation to settle the matter. Behind the scenes, though, Rafael Benitez had never fully wanted this signing in the first place. Reports at the time say he would rather have brought in the young Montenegrin forward Stevan Jovetic instead. That lack of full support showed up almost immediately in how Keane was actually used on the pitch. Benitez built his team around a 4-2-3-1 system, with Steven Gerrard playing just behind striker Fernando Torres in the central role Keane wanted for himself. That left no clear space for Keane in his best and most natural position. Instead, he was often pushed out wide to the left or brought on only as a substitute late in matches he should have started. Out of 23 starts that season, he played the full 90 minutes only 5 times, a striking sign of just how little Benitez trusted him. For a player used to leading the line for his boyhood club, that kind of constant uncertainty wore him down quickly. After only 6 months at Anfield, Keane returned to Tottenham, who paid £12 million to bring him back south. Liverpool were left with a loss of around £7 million on the whole deal, a costly reminder of how badly the dream move had gone. It would be easy to simply blame Benitez for all of it, and his lack of backing for the signing, along with a system that never suited Keane, clearly played a large part. But fairness matters here too. Keane also could not force his way into a settled system quickly enough, and he never truly adapted to the tactical role he was given. This fracture was not one single failure, and it should not be told as a simple story of villain and victim. It was poor planning in the transfer market, a tactical mismatch on the pitch, and a boyhood dream that simply moved too fast for either side to properly fix before it fell apart. So far, this has been about people Robbie Keane clashed with. Now flip that idea around, because some of the strongest grudges in his story are not his own. They belong to supporters who feel he let them down. After the Republic of Ireland changed its coaching staff, Keane kept a contract worth £250,000 a year, even though he no longer had an active role with the team. The FAI itself was in serious financial difficulty at the time. Many Irish supporters felt that accepting that money damaged his standing as the country's record goalscorer. Then came a bigger storm. In June 2023, Keane became head coach of Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel. He stayed in the role through the escalation of the conflict in Gaza, defending his choice by pointing to his duty of care towards staff he had brought with him from Ireland. The backlash in Ireland was intense. His wife, Claudine Keane, said threatening messages had made her feel unsafe in her own country. After leaving Israel in 2024, Keane took charge of Ferencváros for the 2025-26 season. He criticized players who would not press hard enough in matches, and he later objected publicly to a rule requiring 5 Hungarian players to stay on the pitch at all times, saying it made ordinary substitutions almost impossible. That disagreement helped push him toward the exit. All of this connects straight back to where we started, the opposition to his possible Celtic appointment. The Israel chapter of his career was the reason so many supporter groups spoke out against him. Looked at closely, Keane's own choices after his playing days created deeper anger among fans than almost any rivalry from his time on the pitch. For all of that tension, Robbie Keane's career deserves real respect. He earned 146 caps for the Republic of Ireland and scored a record 68 international goals, a mark that still stands. In the Premier League, he found the net 126 times across 349 appearances, good enough to place him among the competition's all-time top scorers. Few players survive as many transfers and public disagreements as Keane did and still perform at a high level. His loan spell at Celtic ended with him named Fans Player of the Year. Later, at LA Galaxy, he became one of the most decorated players in MLS history, winning 3 league titles and a Most Valuable Player award. The same fire that pushed him into training ground fights and standoffs with managers also pushed him to score goals that few Irish players will ever match. Robbie Keane remains one of the most important figures in the history of Irish football. His scoring record is secure, and his relationships along the way remain one of the more complicated parts of a remarkable career.